Morning, Dan. How's it going?
Yeah, good, mate. It's lovely to finally sort of meet you. I think we've been internet friends for a little while now,
That's right.
and we've obviously been chatting behind the scenes. But yeah, no, it's lovely to properly meet you, and I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to this. I've never done anything like it, so
Great.
actually a little bit nervous.
Don't be nervous, mate. I said it's lovely to meet you as well. I mean, I've been following your journey for quite a while on Instagram and on Facebook and also YouTube as well. So if people don't know you, just to quickly introduce yourself, I said I know what you do, but if people don't know you, Dan, can you just explain just quickly what you do?
Yeah, cool. So my name is Dan Leggatt, and I suppose my overall category would be musician, and more recently, I suppose, content creator. Even though I'm not sure how I feel about that sort of term, but yeah. So I do basically anything music related. I play guitar, bass in bands, do online sessions, and then, like I said, I've sort of developed into YouTube kind of land and Instagram. And I suppose that's potentially a thing to get into. And this is how important now, just being a musician, is to have all of your social media and your YouTubes and your, because that's basically your business card now. So yes, I do a little bit of everything really. Overall musician, just to cut a long story short.
Yeah, no, it's great. And we were just saying before we went live, you can tell everyone if you want that you've got a gig coming up. So we're gonna sort of cut it not too short, but we're gonna cut it sort of bang on 12. I know you gotta go because you've got a gig to get off to.
Yeah.
So let's just talk briefly about that. That came through last minute, did it? Or
Yeah, so I'm going back and playing with my old function band. So my brother's on drums, so it's always nice to get to play with my bro. I play bass in that band, and we've done all sorts. We're sort of a wedding band, function band, all of that sort of stuff. But we've actually done cruise ships and stuff in the past. So I was just saying to you, it's not only trying to remember the set from a little while ago, but it's also going back to playing bass. So I'm sure my fingers will not be thanking me after the gig, but yeah, looking forward to it.
what was the? I'm going to ask you. Just I'm interested myself, but what was the cruise ship life like? How was that for you?
Yeah, it's a very interesting life in general. Have you ever done anything like that?
No, it's always been on the. I've been offered a few times, and I went to auditions, and I got slots for cruise ships, and then I always end up backing out for some sort of reason. Something come up that would
Yeah,
take me away from what I was going to go through the cruises. And then I've got a wife as well. I've got a boy now, and it's always like, oh, I can't really go away for 6 months, and it never seems to sort of work with my diary. So I've never committed to it in the end. But yeah,
yeah. So for me, it all came up at the right time. I'd been to university, I'd left university and come home, and I was doing sort of pub gigs and wedding gigs and trying to figure out where I'd been at uni. I'd sort of kept on some work back at home, but nothing major. So once I'd come back, it was then, right, what do I do now? Because I'm back living at home with my parents, and I've sort of lost, touch of what was going on music wise. Sort of, I used to do when I was a lot younger, quite a few deps and things. And I'd sort of lost that because when you're not there to be called upon, you sort of go to the bottom of the list.
yeah,
So I was sort of trying to figure out what it was I actually did want to do. I knew I wanted it to be music, but then you've got to think about how am I going to make money from this? And, it's getting something that's kind of sustainable. And obviously, having been at uni, I came away with the obligatory debt and all that sort of stuff. So my brother had started playing in this function band, and he was really enjoying it. And obviously, they were sort of making pretty good money, as you do in a wedding band. And they had lined up to do, they were doing a DFDS ferry contract, Newcastle to Amsterdam, backwards and forwards for a month. And that was going to be sort of their rehearsal for then going away on cruise ship. They'd been booked for celebrity cruises. And then at the last minute, the bass player just decided he didn't want to go. And I'd depped with them on guitar a few times. And basically, I can't remember exactly what happened, but my brother just came to me and he was like, would you be up for playing bass with us? And I think really at the time I was a bit like, oh, I'm not sure. And then it was like, I've got nothing to lose, literally nothing to lose at this point. So I put in some serious time trying to, because I didn't want to be sort of a guitarist playing bass, if you know what I mean.
yeah,
We can all sort of busk bass when we have to. We've all played bass for money.
yeah,
But I sort of really wanted to, because as well, doing that kind of contract, the repertoire is huge. So it's all the the more soul and Motown stuff. I knew I didn't want to be up there just whacking it with a pick. I wanted to get finger style down and all that sort of stuff. So it was quite a mission to get prepped for it, but we did the DFDS contract and that was really fun. And then it was time for the cruise ship thing. But the only thing was, obviously, it is a big block of time. I think that first one was 5 months.
Right.
And to be honest, I really enjoyed it. There's pros and cons like there is with any job. I think being away from home and your friends and everything is tough. But on the flip side, I was lucky to do it with my brother. So I sort of had, one of my best mates there anyway. And we shared a cabin together, and obviously we've shared a house together. So there was none of this like weirdness of trying to tiptoe around your cabin mate. We know each other very well. Yes. And I think that did definitely help the situation. But playing wise, it's just a great way to expand your repertoire. You're playing 2 or 3 sets most nights, sometimes 4, constantly adding to it, obviously, as sort of new stuff comes out, or they say, oh, we're going to do a whatever theme night next week, would you be able to learn? The worst one for me was they asked if we could do a like a country set, right, but like that more, because we were over in America, it was that more produced country, sort of bro country, I think they call it. And that was just like, I have never even heard these songs before, let alone know how to play them. So, yeah, I'd say overall wicked experience. I did it for about 2 years on and off. I think I did 5 months, 2 months and 4 months. And after that, that was me. I was happy. I'd done it,
You cruised out.
Yeah, fully cruised out. And the thing is as well, some people, it's a perfect lifestyle. Like, I know some people that we worked with at the time that are still doing it now. And I mean, this was going back to 2014, 2015. They still do it now and they absolutely love it on and off. And I mean, it's a great way to earn money because obviously all your accommodation and food and stuff's all chucked in. So that's great. Obviously, you do end up spending a bit if you want to see the sights and, to be honest, just get off the boat. Yeah. They've got all the stuff on there, but it's nice to just have a break. So yeah, overall, very positive experience for me. And I don't think I'd necessarily be the musician I am now without doing it. Like, because it's constant practice. You're constantly learning songs, and it's, your ear develops and things, and the way you can sort of then learn to busk songs on the spot. If you know what key it's in, you can then, someone will shout out a few chords and you just get into that sort of habit. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, but for me, it had a lifespan. Let's just say that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great thing, I suppose, because you don't have to, unless you've got a house back at home, you ain't got to pay a mortgage, you ain't got to pay your rent or whatever. As you said, you've got accommodation and food all provided. Yeah. You didn't get seasick then? That didn't affect you?
No, I didn't on the big cruises. No, but when we did, it was that first DFDS contract. So I've done it a few times since. So obviously it's Newcastle to Amsterdam. It's a much smaller boat, and the weather is far more inclement than it was in the Caribbean. And we were actually, at the time, we were at sea for the worst storm since, like, whatever it was, 1983. And that was just a batten down the hatches job. They said, you're not playing tonight because, everything is going to fall over. So anything you can pack it down. And it was, in the crew mess, the plates were like flying off the tables. And so that was quite an experience. And you could see, like, if you look down one of the long corridors, you could kind of see the ship twisting as it went up the waves and stuff. It was insane. But so I did get a little bit seasick on that one.
I can imagine, mate. That sounds horrific. Yeah, I mean, that's super cool though. I mean, it's something that I've not ticked off the list, and I don't know. I think my opportunity. I was going to say a really bad joke then and say my ship has sailed, but I think my opportunity for this is probably gone now. I said I got a young boy and I'm married. I don't think that's gonna happen anytime soon. But it's something that I've always been aware of, and I think it just does seem like, for a musician, it does seem like a great life. But then I do know some people, as you said, that have done it for years and years and years, and they've lost themselves a little bit because they're always traveling around, and they're a little bit, just a little bit like they live on this boat, and yes, they get a chance to get off every now and again, but they sort of lost their connection back to home and like people, and because they're so at the network for such a long period of time, just lost all their sort of friends and sort of connections and stuff.
Yeah, I think that was part of what sort of pulled me away from it, because every time you go home, you know, some people have moved on, some people are still there, you know, friend wise, that more talking. And it's like, if I keep doing this, I won't have anything to come back to eventually, you know. It just, that's the way it goes. But it's yeah, like I said, I think some people are just built for it. You know, but unfortunately not me, because to be fair, the money was pretty good.
Yeah, no, I mean it sounds. I mean, it always sounds pretty good, and I've seen the posts and stuff, and I'm like, that's a good salary for,
Mm.
you know, with not much overheads. Can you put a myth to bed for me? Is it when you're on the sea, do you have to pay tax?
No, as I understand it, but I think my loophole of it was, as long as I'm not incriminating myself with HMRC,
We cut this back out of the video.
yeah, is that because I was out of the country for more than 6 months out of the year,
Yeah.
you don't pay tax. But also, I think part of the deal with them was that you were paid after they'd paid their taxes over there, I think.
Right.
So it didn't come out of our pay packet what we were given, but I think they paid
It'd
something.
already come out
Yeah,
before
basically
interview.
prior to the. But yeah, I didn't at the time, because it was out of the country for more than 6 months, and I think that's the rule. If you're working abroad, you pay whatever they want at that end, not this end.
Okay.
But yeah, again, maybe we'll take this out of the video. We'll see.
Do you get use of all the facilities as well, like gyms and stuff and other things? Do you get used to?
Yeah, we were very lucky on our one. I think it does vary sort of ship to ship what your sort of privileges are as a. It depends on your like ranking, if you like. You know, I know, because we were a house band, so we play in all the lounges and stuff. They sort of encouraged you to sort of mingle with the guests a little bit, you know, because you'd play a set and then you were welcome to go and get a drink at the bar. Often they would, you know, guests would offer, you know, if you played them a request or whatever, they'd be like, oh, you know, come and have a drink with us or whatever.
Yeah.
So we had pretty much free reign of the ship. You had to be looking presentable and have your little name tag on. And the only things we couldn't do was use the like, we couldn't use the pool and the spa and stuff like that, because obviously I guess you'd be rocking out in your swimming costume and whatnot, and you can't nowhere to put a badge, is there?
You'd be doing bombs into the pool and stuff. It doesn't look so good.
But yeah, so I think other than the pools and stuff, and like the you know, exclusive dining room sort of thing, we didn't have much we couldn't do. Other than at busy times, you'd be sort of told, you know, oh, dining room's really busy at the moment, can you come back in half hour? But other than that, we were pretty lucky, because a lot of the crew on there are encouraged to stay sort of out of sight. You know, the room staff and stuff, they could obviously go and do their job, but then they were encouraged to stay in the crew areas as much as possible. But I mean, to be honest, a lot of them that we knew, they worked pretty long shifts, so I think they were pretty done by the time they'd done their shift anyway. But yeah, no, we were quite lucky. I know that some people have had a you know, a bad time that I know on ships where they've been in a band, but again, I think it was Disney cruises, you know, they couldn't mix with the guests at all, and it was basically do your job, get to the crew area.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I think it depends, and some people I know on other ships, depending on their contract, can do whatever they want. You know, they don't have to, they can just basically be a guest when they're not playing. So yeah, I think it varies.
Because I've heard stories of, like, you may be bunking up with someone random, and you might be doing other jobs on the ship as well, not just musician. You might be going doing some admin stuff. You might be doing some cleaning stuff. Like, I've heard those sort of horror stories as well.
Yeah, I mean, I know as far as like bunking up with people you don't know, I think that's pretty much a given if you're in an uneven number of band members. So like we had three guys and two girls. So the two girls shared, me and Marty shared, and then the guy was sort of on his own, so he had to bunk up with a random. And obviously, like you say, your schedules aren't always the same, you're doing different jobs, so that's a bit awkward. As far as sort of, I know when we left, part of it was they were pushing a little bit more for musicians to be doing a few other duties and things, and it's like, that's not what we signed up for, really. You know, we don't mind every now and again if it's something like, oh, we're particularly, I think one of the things was sort of just being around when guests were getting off the ship, just to point them in the right direction. So it's not
Okay.
It's not a taxing thing, but it was then like, oh, so we're going to have to get up at this time rather than our normal time, and that was when it was like, oh, I think they're pushing their luck a little bit as well. But yeah.
Well, at least they didn't actually get a mop and bucket out and start cleaning the ship and things.
Absolutely, yeah, no, that didn't happen. But I have heard of that happening on. I think it's normally on the more Asia-based itineraries.
Right.
If sort of, I think it's like GI and stuff get onto the ship, like gastroenteritis or whatever. There has been stories of that getting onto a ship and then it spreads like wildfire. So they have to basically lock down the ship. Well, at the time that seemed like a bit of a weird concept, but obviously following COVID, like it's a bit more believable. But yeah, they had to wipe down all the banisters and go around with masks on and stuff. So I have heard of it happening, but equally they didn't have to play, so swings and roundabouts, I suppose.
Yeah, you don't mind wiping a few banisters if you got like a day off or whatever. So.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm just going to check as well, Dan, because I've a habit every single time I talk to guests. I get really involved in the conversation, and I forget to ask if anyone has any questions for you on the live. That's the whole point. So if anyone does have any questions watching for Dan, then please do feel free to fire away. Just make sure. Maybe we've got a couple of people. Ian Andes, is that somebody you know? I think they said.
It might be a Facebook friend.
Is it? I am Andes, maybe? It says, hi, Dan, it's just me, no sound. Oh. It says no sound. Oh, it says he can hear now. Whoops, that's all good. That's good. That's all good. Yeah, so cool. But if anyone does have any questions, feel free. I'll try and keep an eye on this as well as talking to you.
Sure, mate.
We'll try and keep an eye on this if anyone has any questions for you. Can we talk just briefly? I put a post out the other day, and you mentioned earlier that you went to university.
Yeah.
I put a post out the other day. Not slating university, because I went to university as well. I went to BIM Bristol. But I was just saying that a couple of my students have started to ask the question of, I think I'm going to go to university. What's your thoughts on this? And I was like, yeah, okay, it worked for me for this, and it didn't work for me on that. And I was like, what's the fee for the year? And they're telling me it's like £10,000 and over per year. And they obviously get a student loan for that, and they get a maintenance loan. But you walk out of university like after 3 years or 4 years with 30-40 grand's worth of debt. And it just shocked me a little bit, because when I went, it was sort of like £4,000 or something like that. That was years ago. I don't know, and I was sort of thinking, could you invest in, somebody who's a guitar teacher or whatever, or a vocal teacher, and commit to lessons or whatever, on maybe have a couple a week or whatever, to really learn your craft, as opposed to going off to university and spending absolutely thousands and saddling yourself with debt as soon as you get out. What's your thoughts on university? Did you enjoy your experience?
Yeah. So how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so I'm 34.
Yeah, so I'm 32. So I imagine we went at similar times, because I went, and I was the same as you. I think it was capped at that point at about three or 4 grand a term.
Same as me.
Which has obviously since been expanded massively. So my experience was a little bit different, because I'd done like music GCSEs and A levels.
Yep.
And by the time I'd sort of got out of that, I was already gigging in bands and all this sort of stuff. And at the time I was like, I don't really want to be analyzing classical music. They were pushing that on us a lot. And I think at the time, being younger and stuff, and the sort of slight rock and roll mentality, it was more like, I'm already doing this as a job, and you're trying to tell me that I will need to learn classical music, and it's like, I'm already doing it. So that's obviously not true. And I think part of that is a completely other conversation, but I think a lot of school level music, certainly when I was at school, it may have improved, but from what I've heard, it hasn't massively. They're not really tailoring it around a variety of music. It's more of a focused, you will read music, you will do this, you will do that, where it's like a lot of people don't necessarily want or need that, although it will expand your overall musical vocabulary and all of that sort of stuff. But so by the time I'd got to the end of school, I decided that I definitely wanted to go to university to do something, but I didn't really want to do playing. So I ended up doing a university degree in audio music production and like live sound engineering and tour management. It was sort of an all-in package. So I sort of stepped away from the more tuition side of things at that point. So I don't know, from your question of could you potentially do it more with tutors and things, I think I can't really speak for that, because really I gave that up at that point. But as far as university in general, I think with the fees now, and I think the thing with university for me, it was a great opportunity to dip my toe in the water of living alone without cutting all ties with everything. And obviously you get a little bit of financial support, and I think the networking that you do at university can be very important, and the sort of life skills you pick up both living and working with other people, I think is a big thing. But really, I didn't come away from university with an immediate pathway into an industry. And I think I know some people that have been to BIM in Brighton, and they were sort of the same. They had a great time. I mean, you can't deny the ability to party when you're at university, the social aspect. And like I say, the networking, people that you hook up with in uni that then go on to do other things. And I think that I would have probably still been working with people from university had I done a more performing music kind of degree.
Yes.
But so it's a two-way street. I think a lot of my friends that talking, not about music now, but a lot of my friends that decided not to go to uni and went straight into an apprenticeship or something like that.
Yep.
By the time we all left uni, they had a career that was developing. They were making good money in something they really enjoyed. Mm-hmm. And I think that sort of can be applied to music as well, because really your apprenticeship with music is depending on what you want to do, getting out there and gigging. Networking can't be overlooked when it comes to being a musician of any kind. Like, I would say 90% of the jobs that I've got have been through either word of mouth or having worked with someone on a gig here, and they pull you onto this project and that project. And if you can prove yourself to be reliable and turn up on time and know the stuff, that goes a long way. So almost that is your apprenticeship, if you see what I mean. But yeah, so I don't know if I've really answered your question there or just rambled on for 10 minutes.
You've given two really valid sort of points for both camps, I think, sort of pro and sort of against it. And I think you're right. I think, from thinking quite a lot about it, because my students keep asking me for the advice, and one of them's got an audition on the 3rd, so he's coming up, and I was going to help him get ready for that. I don't know. I've come to the conclusion that I don't feel like, in all honesty, that they do need that. I just feel like, as you said, you can earn your stripes by getting out there, networking, learn from your mistakes, get out there. Maybe you turn up to a gig and you're not quite ready for the gig or whatever, and you make some mistakes and you learn from that, and you don't get called again for the gig, or you look red-faced because everyone's looking at you and you ain't got your parts down, or you've learned the song in the wrong key because you didn't ask the questions, Maybe I think that's a good way of learning, and just getting out there. And as you said, you're then making an income anyway because you're out there gigging. I don't know. But maybe at that age you're not confident because if I look back to when I was doing that, I don't feel like I probably had the confidence to. I was gigging with the band, but maybe not have the confidence to be like out all the time and trying to network and understand the system so much. But I don't know. That's my advice nowadays, I think. But let's talk, Dan, if you don't mind, about your theatre shows, because you do lots of different theatre shows, and I think people might find that quite interesting to find out a bit more about that.
Yeah, so I think sort of going back a little bit, I think when I left university, like I said, I think I was looking for a way to make money being a musician, basically, and that's sort of the golden goose. I decided very early on. I did play in originals bands and stuff way back in the day, and I really loved it, but you felt like you were slogging your guts out. I don't think I really had the dedication to, if you're in an originals band and you care about it, you've got to put in 110% all the time, 110% of your effort, but also 110% of your income, to get to gigs. You have to have another job. And I was like, actually, I'd already started playing in pub bands and things, and I like that idea. And I think I'd always really, rather than, I never wanted to be famous, you know, I never wanted any of that stuff, and I never wanted to, I sort of wanted to be a sideman, really. Like, thinking back, I remember watching one of Pink's live DVDs, and I think it wasn't the current guy who's Justin Derrico, who's an absolute beast. Yeah, it was the guy before that, Rafa Moreira or something. And I was just like, I want to do that, you know, because he's got, you know, he's playing these bitchin' tunes with a great artist, and, you know, he doesn't have to deal with the industry. I think I was sort of disillusioned by the industry before I even got into it, being honest about it, you know, hearing you know, my people I looked up to at the time and talking to them about it. I was just like, do I really want to go through all that sort of stuff? You know, I just want to play guitar. And it was like, that looks like a perfect job for me. So I think I've always been shooting in that direction of like, I'd like to be in a position where I'm playing as a sideman to someone that has a steady stream of gigs. And so I was sort of trying to find a way to do that, and obviously functions and stuff. And then I'd sort of noticed this influx of really good shows in theatres, like tribute shows and things. And I've been to see a few of them and thought, that looks like a great way in, because I mean, playing with someone famous, you have to, there's a lot of, again, it's the networking thing. You need to know the right people. You don't just get called one day out of the blue just to be like, oh, so this guy's looking for, there is a story about that I'll maybe come back to. I had a slight brush with that once, but you know, it was just, this looks like a good way in because it's on a good level. You know, you're playing to people that are really invested in what you're doing as well, because I think that's the thing with a lot of wedding gigs and that, you know, you do often get people come up to you and say, oh man, that was such a good gig, you know, I love what you do and you guys sound great. But really, as long as there was someone there on that night doing those songs, you know, it could be anyone really, if you see what I mean. And so I think the theatre thing really appealed to me, and I was sort of trying to work out how to find my way into that. And I'd applied for a few different things and hadn't got it. And it was things that really I wasn't that invested in. I remember there was sort of like a George Michael one and something else that, you know, I sent in videos and stuff and they were quite keen, but then the logistics and this, that and the other. And I think, again, you want to be really invested in the music because you want to do it the best you can and enjoy it. Anyway, fast forward a little while, I was doing a festival gig, and it turns out that a friend of the keyboard players was you know, he put on some of these tribute shows. And we hadn't met on the day, and I thought, I'm just going to drop him a message and just say, oh, sorry, you know, we didn't get to meet on the day. I'm Dan, I'm Andy's mate. If you ever need a dep guitarist on any of your shows, let me know. And I didn't hear anything for like 2 months. And then out of the blue, I got a phone call, and he just said, our current guitarist is thinking of leaving. I think you'd be great at it. I know you can play. I just need to make sure you're not a dick. Was basically the vibe. You know, it wasn't, I don't, you know, can you do the gig? It was basically, I know you could pull it off. But
can we
you know, can we get on? Are you dedicated? Will you show up on time? X, Y, and Z. So we basically met up for a beer, and he basically said, I need to firm up a few things and I'll let you know. And then that was that. So James is his name, and obviously now like a good mate of mine. And he puts on a Michael Jackson show, which was the biggest one at the time. There was also an ABBA show, and at the time as well, there was a Spice Girls show, which I never got to do. It was lined up for, but obviously COVID happened and things. So yeah, it's basically Michael Jackson and ABBA were the two big ones, and the Michael Jackson one is what pulled me in, and really what he was, I think, you know, he was looking for basically a rock guitarist that could also do all the choppy funk stuff. And it's like, that's my wheelhouse, because they're my two go-to styles of music, you know, that I love to play. So it was a perfect job for me. And I think because when he saw me do that set at the festival, it was with like a funk and soul band. So he sort of, I think, got the picture of that. And so the Michael Jackson show has been amazing. I mean, the material is just unreal, and obviously I get to play the Beat It solo every night, and the thing that I've lucked out with on that show is they they let everyone have their moment to shine on stage, because everyone is unbelievably talented. I mean, the band, they're all absolute monsters, and we've got like a dance team on it, and they are phenomenally talented as well. So everyone gets their time to shine, and also kind of got told, as long as you're serving the song, you can, have sort of free reign. You can add your own little bits in, and there's solo sections in the show that are improvised every night and stuff like that. Obviously the beat it solo has got to be bang on, as close as I can possibly pull it off every night.
What guitar do you use for that, Dan? What guitar do you use?
At the moment I'm using a Tom Anderson. It's a hollow, what do they call their model? I think it's just a classic hollow. I was using a Sir Classic Pro before that, but the hollow one is a lot lighter to play on stage. And I know it sounds like a thing, but like some festival sets were up there for an hour and 20 minutes, and it's not just standing there and playing. I'm out interacting with the dancers and going around on stage and trying to pretend to look like a rock star for an hour or so. But so when you've got something that weighs virtually nothing around your neck, you're a bit more confident to throw it around and do all that stuff. So, and I mean, that was one of the challenges, but also something I really enjoyed was getting all the sounds together for the show. And that's how I actually ended up in Kemperland, was trying to figure out how I was going to pull it all off. But yeah, so there was that one. The ABBA show was really fun, because I would say I've always been a casual fan of ABBA, as in I know the songs, played them on wedding gigs. I love the stuff. But when you when you have to get into actually learning all of these parts, it's like, bloody hell, they are monster musicians, incredible songwriters, and there's more chords in there than most songs. It's quite a lot to take on. So yeah, I've really enjoyed that. We still do the ABBA show occasionally, but it's not looked after by James anymore. It's another company. So we do a lot of their festival dates as a band now. But the Michael Jackson thing is like the sole focus, and it's been going, from strength to strength. We had, I got lucky getting the gig, but I got lucky in January 2020. So I did like 7 shows, and then the pandemic hit. So we didn't get a lot of, because the whole band changed over. It was a new band. The guys that have been doing it for a number of years, and sort of had all mutually decided they wanted to do other things. But so yeah, I got like 7 shows in, and then it was like, great, no work at all, because obviously theatres really were the first thing to shut up shop. Yeah, and the last thing to come back. So it was a struggle, and it's to sort of stay. We all wanted to go back to it as soon as possible, but obviously you then have to do other things. And I was just praying that everyone would come back, because it's such a solid team. The musicians, you need to, on a show like that, you need to trust everyone on stage, because stuff can go wrong. And I'm not talking about people messing up parts, I'm talking about like gear going down, or it just happens when you're touring, and you need to trust everyone, that everyone's gonna do their thing, and also have that connection that when the energy in the room, maybe the crowd's not 100%, that you can look over to your mate and have a laugh and get hyped up for it. So yeah, it's been going from strength to strength. I mean, we've been doing quite a few abroad shows since we came back from the pandemic, and we were lucky enough to do the London Palladium last year, and we've done a few arena dates this year. So there's a lot of stuff in the pipeline at the moment that could be really mega, but like anything in this business, nothing's a dead cert until you're literally stood on that stage. So fingers crossed, we've got some cool stuff coming up. But yeah, so that's sort of how I got into it. And yeah, did that answer your question?
It did. It sounds like a fantastic job, mate. Like, has the Kemper let you down? I got questions for, because I'm a Kemper user as well. I'm just interested to know, is you said about gear and things, gear failure and things like that. Have you had that? Has the Kemper let you down at all? Or
no, touch wood. On a gig, it's been absolutely rock solid, because I've actually been toying with the idea of getting a Kemper stage, because I use the rack and the pedal and all that gubbins.
Yep.
But I've been toying with the idea of getting the Kemper stage. And the one thing that's kind of putting me off is like that unit has been so hardcore and has never let me down on a gig. I'm almost like, let's just stick with that. You know, like I don't update the firmware. I just, that just stays. Yeah. You know, that's my sounds. They're programmed. I leave it. But no, I've never been let down. Have you had some issues with it then?
Well, I've had a few little glitchy things. Yeah, I think mine is firmware related. I haven't updated to the recent like beta one for that reason. Because yeah, I've had it a few times where I've turned it on and it hasn't loaded up. I've got like an error message, and I'm like at a gig, and I'm like, oh shit. So beads of sweat start to go down. And you're like, okay, don't panic. I'll just turn it off. Give it a second. Back on again. That classic off and on again.
Yeah.
And then normally on the second boot up, it will fire up and it sets. It's normally something to do. I don't know why, but it's like the remote doesn't load up. It gets stuck on like the Kemper Profiler on the screen.
Oh right.
And I thought that might be a cable issue going between the remote and the back of the. So I got the same as you. I think the racked version of it.
Yeah.
So I bought new cables, and it's still every now and again. It's normally on a really good gig when I'm like, oh, everything's going good. This is so good. Like it's going to be a good gig. And I like turn it on. It's like, oh no, not this again. So
computer says no.
Computer says no. Yeah. So I don't know what it is, and I don't know whether I should wait until not the beta one, but the next one comes out, like the full version, and then update it and see if that sort of clears that issue. I've contacted Kemper a few times, and they've said, "Oh, that sounds like a firmware sort of a software issue." Yeah, that's absolutely fine. We can sort that out, but you need to send it back to Germany. I'm like, oh, great.
Yeah. To be fair, the only issue I ever have with mine is one of the buttons on the remote went gammy, and I did have to send it back. But fortunately, it was in warranty, and it was just, it wasn't broken or anything. But the bank switch would like occasionally skip a few.
Oh, okay.
And it was like, oh, I was sort of looking at the warranty period and thinking, because I just lived with it for a couple of weeks, and then it was like, you know what, if I'm going to do this, let's just get it back now while I don't have to pay for it.
Yeah, no,
but yeah,
makes sense. I think I'm out of warranty now, so I've even said to I've chatted to the boss, the wife Charlotte. I've said, you know, I was thinking, I might have to get a second Kemper because I've started gigging a bit more now with different bands and things, and I've got Richie Kotzon's RK5 fly rig sort of pedal.
Oh yeah.
And that's just my get me through a gig pedal. So that's like slipped in the front of the pocket of the gig, you know, guitar bag. If everything shit is the fan and it all goes wrong, at least like within a few seconds I can go click, right, I'm in, let's go.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my sort of backup. I was thinking, I might get a second Kemper, just for that sort of peace of mind that I've got it. It's there if I need it.
Yeah, I do a similar thing to you. So on any of those show gigs, I've got it's not a Tech 21 fly rig, but it's like one of those knockoff brand sort of fly rigs that's always in a DI box ready to go just in case. But I'm someone that does the full belt and braces because I'm sure, like you, we've done enough gigs to know that if anything can go wrong, it probably will and probably has at some point. So I've got my main guitar on a wireless, the second guitar's on a cable, always plugged in.
Mm-hmm.
So if I break a string or the wireless goes gammy, I've got that. I've got the fly rig as a backup. Spare cables. I've even got a spare Cat 5 cable that stays on stage just in case.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I'd rather have that and just be chill than have it in a case somewhere else. And then because the trouble is with like those theatre shows, obviously the whole thing is done to a click track because of, you know, lighting cues and X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So basically, if you are not ready for that song when it counts in, you get left behind. There's no
you don't want to miss the beat solo. That's the thing.
Exactly. I've never broken a string on that yet. Touch wood. Let's just touch all the wood I can find.
I mean, you're right though, because I've done similar things to you, like just amateur mistake really, and I've been doing it for years, and just put my stuff in my guitar bag, like next to the stage or in the room, keeping it tidy, and then a string snaps, and you're like, oh shit, I put my things in that bag out there, like, or something happens and you need to swap something, like batteries in an IEM pack or whatever. You've got loads of them, but they're in the gig bag out in the next room. You're like, oh, why didn't I bring that on stage? Like, why have I done that? And I still do that now. Like, I try and think of everything, but now and again something happens and I've gone off. I forgot to put that on stage, sort of thing. So, but yeah, I mean, these things happen, and I do say to my students all the time. I think they think I'm just going on about it, but I'm like, think of every single event you have, every single possibility, and then think again, and then just make sure you're covering yourself for all of these things, and there will be something that you haven't thought of that will happen, and then that'll prepare you for the next time because that'll be included in the things you think of at every gig.
100%, and I think that's quite an important point as well in general to gigging. is I think you learn far more from your mistakes than you do doing a gig right. You know, when that's the learning thing. Like you say, I think we've all done a gig we've probably turned up to slightly less prepared than we should have been in our younger days.
Yeah.
And you learn quick, you know, and that includes gear and learning songs and all of that stuff. So, yeah.
It's like buying a new piece of gear or something, like a Kemper, and just going, right, I'm going to turn it to the gig and just use it.
Yeah.
And we know that's like the worst thing ever to do. Like, you would never do that because, you know, you need time to dial the patches in, get the levels all across the, you know, it would be the worst thing to do. But I've seen that. I've been out gigging and seen that, like buying new gear and just turning up with it and expecting it to work and be at its best level. And it's like, it's not. That thing needs dialing in. It needs sorting out before you turn up to the gig. Like,
yeah,
I'm sure you've come across that as well. But
oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot I haven't come across, to be honest with you. I've probably been guilty of some of them as well.
Yeah, same. I'm not going to say I'm perfect. I'm just going to have a little check, mate, see if there's any questions on the
Yeah, no worries
on the post there. Should we talk about YouTube? I know we're on time constraint, but should we talk about YouTube? Because I know your videos. Just a bit of feedback for you. Your videos are super engaging, so like, well done. Like, they're really
Thank
good,
you.
really good videos. I've watched a few of yours. I watched a Kemper video. When I got my Kemper, I was like, oh, this is good. This is a really good video. And there's loads of different videos I've watched over the time. And I just think that this is really interesting, mate. And you come across as, and I've spoke to you now, and I know that for sure, like, really down to earth. You want to help people. Like, the information comes across as like you're experienced and it's valid information for people to watch. So, you know, that's some feedback for you. But yeah, should we talk a little bit about YouTube, because that's been quite successful for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, thank you so much for those comments, by the way, because that's you know, exactly sort of what I shoot for. And you know, it doesn't always come easily. You know, I think that was sort of the hardest thing getting into it. Was I sort of knew what I wanted to do, but I had no real experience using a camera. I had, you know, that I say to people all the time, because I'm still using like an old Canon that I bought years and years ago, and you know, I often get comments from people that I do videos for and stuff like, you know, your camera looks really good. What are you using? It's like, it's some shitter from years ago, you know. But I learned quite early on that lighting is the most important thing, really. You can make a great camera look crap with bad lighting, and you can make whatever I just said the reverse of. Yeah.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, so that was a huge sort of breakthrough for me. And like, I definitely do need to upgrade my camera. I'm sort of getting to the point of limitation now, where, very much like gear, I've learned through the years, because I didn't used to have this opinion, but that familiarity with your equipment is far more important than having the best equipment. And I'm an advocate for that with guitar stuff, and now with you know, camera setups and things. And I think I've now reached a point where I know enough about stuff that getting a new camera will really enhance what I'm able to do, rather than having all of these settings that I don't understand, and all of that stuff. So I had to you know, put in a lot of time, because it's basically learning a completely different skill set. You know, I didn't really have much idea about editing. And the ironic thing is, I learned how to do YouTube by watching loads of YouTube videos. You know, anything I didn't know how to do, you just YouTube it and soak it in. And I mean, the YouTube thing's funny, because I think deep down I always wanted to do it. Like, I used to watch Pete Thorne's videos when I was a lot younger. I mean, he, at one point, it was sort of him, Gear Man Dude, and like one or two others on YouTube, and that was your gear consumption, or certainly of any real quality. So I sort of knew I wanted to do something like that, because I've always been a colossal gear nerd, like, always. And that's, for me, part of playing guitar, the enjoyment of it. Part of it comes from the setting up sounds and the equipment, and I just love it. You know, I'm a massive nerd. So I sort of knew that would be a solid shout. But like, when I lived at home with my parents, obviously I had like my bedroom, so that wasn't really an option to set up anything. And I didn't have the money, like, to even, I didn't have a laptop, I didn't have a camera. So it was like, okay. And then when I'd come back from the ships, I moved into like my first flat and had a spare bedroom. I was sharing it with my missus. We now own a house, which is unbelievable, to be honest, for me, because I never thought I'd own a house. But
Congrats on
yeah,
that.
thank you very much. But so when we were in the flat, I sort of flirted with the idea of doing videos, and I did a few things, and that I think they might still be on my channel. And one of them was picked up by a guy called, I think his name was Stefan, that worked for TC Electronic at the time, and I'd done a demo of the Viscous Vibe, and he'd shared it on their page, and I think he dropped me a message. So we were chatting, and he was very supportive, and like, you know, sort of, you could really do something with this. And he actually went on to, when he left TC, he created his own like YouTube channel and sort of thing. He's the guy, the Pedal Zone. I don't know if you've ever seen their video. So that's him. But anyway, to be honest, I was sort of, because my room, the space was too small, I had too much gear in that space. So every time I wanted to film, it was like a massive operation. So I did sort of like 6 or 7 videos. And, you know, I enjoyed it, but it was just ball ache, to be honest with you. And I didn't really feel at the time like I was bringing anything new to the table with regards to videos. You know, good feedback and everything, but, and I was terrible at presenting as well. Like I couldn't, my original demos were just like audio only, pedal in shot, you know, settings and stuff, which obviously for a lot of people, the feedback was like, this is what a demo should be like.
Yeah.
No chat, just give us the tones. And it's like, yeah, that's great. But also you don't, from a branding perspective, just to get a bit off the track here, but from a branding perspective, they're not really investing in you. And I wanted to, at the time, I was trying to use YouTube to sort of one up my career a little bit. And obviously being sort of a faceless person on YouTube, you don't get that. Because I was trying to sort of really use that to enhance the gigging side of things, which in hindsight was sort of the right and wrong attitude at the same time. But so anyway, that sort of tapered off. And really, I was really busy with the gigs at the time and all of this sort of stuff. So anyway, fast forward to when we were looking to buy a house, it was like one of my criteria was like, you know, I really want to have a space that I can turn into a studio, very much like I see that you have there, the ultimate sort of man cave vibe.
I'm in the garden.
Oh, you're in the garden.
I have.
Nice.
This was built literally, I reckon, probably about a year ago now. My son was on the way. We live in a 2-bed house. Son was on the way. I was using the back room as a teaching studio. Obviously, he's going to take that with his cot and things like that and all these bits and bobs. So we built this garden studio. A company built this for us, like literally from scratch and bespoke. It's exactly how I wanted it. All the insulation and stuff, and all the sort of noise cancelling and stuff. Yeah, actually best thing to do. But you've got great space there as well, and you've obviously done the same. You had to have some sort of space that you can work from. I get.
Yeah, you know, and it's when we, because we moved in July, I think, of 2019. So we got really lucky because we managed to buy this. Obviously, we didn't know what was going to happen, but we managed to buy it before the pandemic, which you know, if we couldn't have planned it any better, because we also managed to get, so this is like a spare bedroom at the moment. This is, then there's a master bedroom, and we had a little box room as well, which was used for, you know, storing stuff and that. And obviously when the pandemic happened, my wife, well, now wife, recently wifed, is she had to then start working from home, and it was like, shit, like, how are we going to pull this off? Like, especially because
get booted out your room.
Yeah, I was just like, oh no, I finally got a space, you know. But she's taken the box room, and that's great, and all of that stuff. So we managed to make it work. But like I said, if we were still in the flat, it would have been carnage. And obviously, doing what I do, and she's always been more of a 9-to-5 career kind of person. We didn't actually see a lot of each other. So the pandemic was a very interesting time to really sort of, you know, test your relationship, you know. But I digress a little bit. So so when we'd first moved in, this room just turned into a dumping ground for gear, and nothing really happened. And then when the pandemic happened, I had sort of a month or two of just like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I've got no income, you know, being generally very sort of, you know, sad about what was going on. You know, you're obviously worrying about family and how are you going to fill your time and all this stuff. And then literally one day I was just like, I actually really enjoyed making videos back at the flat. You know, that's what I'd intended to do. So let's do the room out a bit. Obviously, it's developed a lot over time. There was none of this stuff. The video's still up, and it was just me. And the intro of the video is something like me sat there. I was just like, I've got this Kemper now. I'd like to do a bit of stuff on the Kemper, because there's not loads of just showing off tones and sort of tutorial type stuff. So I was like, we'll go with that, because I was really interested in it at the time as well, which obviously really helps. And it was me sat there. I'd made sort of video lights out of a few clip-on, like bulb lights on a mic stand, and it was all very janky. But I knew that, yeah. But I sort of knew that I could get good audio. So I was sort of like, as long as the audio's good, the video doesn't really matter. And the opening line of the video is something like, "Hi, guitarists and people that have nothing better to do. It's currently the pandemic and I'm stuck in my house. So I thought I'd show you some of my Kemper tones." And by pure fluke, I suppose, the YouTube algorithm obviously did something. And, obviously people were at home. So I guess people were on YouTube more and all of this stuff. And that video just got traction out of nowhere. So it was like, oh, okay, maybe there's something to this. So it was then sort of deciding, right, the Kemper thing's obviously got a bit of traction. So I'll start with doing some Kemper tutorials and stuff. And get back to doing some just general pedal demos as well. And obviously with each video, you learn slightly more about the editing and the lighting, and it's pure trial and error, really. And it just sort of snowballed a little bit. A few videos got picked up by some different companies and shared, which was amazing. But I was still really crap at actually presenting. I felt like I was being really natural and chill at the time, and then I'd watch it back and it's like, you look like a robot, man. Like, and it's really hard to get that balance between sort of, you feel like you're overdoing it a bit, but that's what comes across. It's a bit like being on stage, where you have to move big because you're sort of far away to make it look more stagey. It's striking a balance of not coming across like, too cheesy and like, hey, how's everyone doing, but still having some energy about you, So sitting in a room talking to a camera is actually far more of a skill than I ever gave it credit for.
It's the hardest thing to do, isn't it? Like, I'm sure you've had moments like I have where you just, press record on the camera, the red light starts blinking, and you had it all set up what you're going to say, and then you just go, start that again.
100%.
So many times, and then you get those videos, I'm sure, like you have, where you're just on it one day, and it's just like coming out, and it's really good content, and you're like, oh, this is great. Like, I've had both, and I'm sure you've had the same sort of thing, same experience.
100%. And I wish that I had the time to make sort of like outtake reels and stuff, because some of it is just pure gold, and you just think, and it's when you're trying to get a line out, and you keep tripping over your words and you do it like 5 times and you just like, you can see yourself on camera just going, for fuck's sake, like, how is this not happening? Like, I can't even do words today. And I think that's been a hard thing to sort of get over as well, is making videos is a creative thing, like, but you also, like, because I'm a sort of one-man operation, I'm the guy that comes up with the idea. I've got to set up the room, focus the camera, make sure the audio is running. So by the time you've done all of this stuff, you've then got to go into the zone of like, right, I've got, I've now got to present, but I've also got to not play shit, like it. Yeah. And like we both know, everyone has off days when they play. It doesn't matter who you are. Yeah. And some days it's just not coming out. So there are days when I've been through all of that thing, set up all the stuff, sat down in front of the camera, given it the best go, and even at times got to the editing stage and I'm watching it back and just thinking, you could do so much better. I can tell I'm not in the zone there, so everyone else will be able to. And I think that is the struggle. And I think, I got really lucky quite early on, just getting a few. When I started making a few more pedal demos and that, when I'd finished them, I'd either email or Facebook message the company and just say, I've done this video for your product. I'm not after anything, but if you could, it'd be great if you would share it on your Facebook or whatever. And I got really lucky because I did that a few times and they got back to me and said, 100% we'll share it. can we send you more stuff because we love your videos? And two of those people were Richard from Wampler, who was a massive supporter from like day one. And almost these people sort of took a chance on me because they were like, we can't pay you for anything at the moment, but we'll send you some free pedals if you do the content, and then when you get a bigger sort of subscriber base, we'll definitely look at giving you something for your time. Like, and the other guy was mental. I'd done a demo for the Friedman Dirty Shirley pedal, and I'd emailed Friedman and just said this, and literally 10 minutes later I got an email back from Dave Friedman, and he was like, this is wicked, like, we love it, I'd love for you to do some more stuff for the company, I'll put you in touch with our guy. And it was like, whoa, because I, like, being a nerd like I am, people like Dave Friedman are like big deal to me. I fucking love amps. Sorry, am I allowed to swear on this? Because I have a few times.
Yeah, it's absolutely fine.
But they're like legends to me, and I love their stuff. And I've watched interviews with Dave, so to just get an email back from him directly, and Friedman have been incredibly good to me over the time. And through that, I was then put on to Boutique Amp Distribution, who look after Friedman and all this stuff. So I've got a guy called Stefan, who is sort of my go-to there, and he's been an absolute legend and stuff as well. And he's got me involved in a load of stuff and put me forward for this, that, and the other. And again, it's that networking thing. I had no intention of really doing that. No. It was just, I wanted a few shares, and then out of that, it sort of, snowballed.
That's a really sort of clever thing to do, though. Like, that's a really good thing, because you weren't expecting anything back. And if you didn't get nothing back, it doesn't matter. It's just an email. Like a well-written email. You've done the content. If they share it, fantastic. You'll get to a wider audience. People might go, I like this guy. This is really cool. I'll go and subscribe to your channel. That's what you could have got from it, I suppose. Like, the least you could have got from that is a couple of people subscribe to your channel from them sharing it. But by you doing that, and also saying, like, because you could have done it, you could have done this, couldn't you? You could have been that other person would go, well, I've just done this video for you. Would you mind paying for this so you could use it on your channel, sort of thing? And they go, oh, that's coming across a bit sort of like, no, we don't really want to work with this guy. But you didn't. You were very clever in the way you approached it. And actually, they came back and said, yeah, we really love the video. We'll share it. And we want to work with you in the future and send you some bits.
Yeah. And I think some of that came from, my attitude, or not my attitude, because like I said, when I was younger, I was an idiot, but my, my learning through doing gigs and trying to find work, I've sort of been through an industry already. And so my experience in that, I think, influenced the way I'd have approached the video side of things, because again, I think I'm used to now being on a gig and coming across as a professional, and I've got a reputation to lean on. Whereas in the video world, I knew that I was basically at like jam night level, if you like. I'd taken a massive step back in a career that I didn't really understand. And to be honest, I'd never thought about the YouTube thing being a sort of second career at the time. Really, it was a lockdown project. I just wanted something to do. And if it could have gained me some traction, and obviously the dream is potentially a little bit of free gear out of it and all that stuff, but it's really sort of taken off. And I'm now really fortunately being asked by companies to produce stuff for them outside of YouTube, some of their social media stuff. So I've kind of, in a way, created a really sort of small niche gear marketing company without really meaning to.
It's something you can fall back on as well. Like, if God forbid we get another COVID come up or whatever, companies want to push more of their stuff out, and they know people are at home and that. Like, I think sales of like things like Andertons and things like that went up massive in COVID because people were buying guitars and things. You've set yourself up a little safety net that that's going to be available for you if things do stop on the work front again. God forbid. You've got something set up, like, from your own, basically from being proactive when we couldn't be proactive, we had to stay at home. You were proactive with your time and what you were doing, and created another little second career, as you said, out of that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like I said, it was never that intention, but it's made me realize how important it is as a musician to have multiple streams of revenue, because I'd always leaned pretty much exclusively on gigging. And I don't think I really took into account how much pressure that was putting on me to take every single gig, always be on the forums,
Yeah.
you know, just trying to take in as many gigs as possible. Whereas now I've been able to just have a bit more scope on what gigs I want to take and put time into other things. And it's, you know, having like YouTube revenue and stuff doesn't pay loads by itself. You know, the videos I get paid to do doesn't pay loads by itself. I sell some Kemper stuff that doesn't make loads by itself, but all of these things together
add up.
add up. And then if one goes down the toilet, there's others. And I think that would be a massive bit of advice I would give to everyone, because everyone tried to tell me and I didn't listen, that, you know, maybe one day you don't want to gig anymore, or the thing that we'd never thought of was maybe you can't gig anymore with the COVID, you know. So I think, definitely having multiple streams of revenue and just keeping yourself open to the full scope of what the industry is now, because there's loads of stuff that internet wise, you know, I didn't even know existed that could be a potential source of revenue for you, depending on what your skill set is. And it's wild.
I'm gonna open up, Dan, to some questions, because I think there was a few dropped in here, and I will.
Yeah, cool,
if
man.
If anyone has, we're just gonna finish off now, as I said, because I know you've got to get away as well, anyway. But
I'm good for like another 15 minutes or so. So yeah, we're good. Cool. We're good.
All right. So I'm going to open out to some questions. So if anyone, I am looking at my phone now. So if anybody wants to ask any questions, then now is the time, because I actually am staring at the phone and checking the questions, if I can get this to work. But yeah, if you want to ask any questions to Dan, which Dan said, thank you very much, mate, because you've been so insightful today. And like, even for me, just asking you some questions about theatre shows and things like that. I know, like, this is why I do this podcast. Not only do I enjoy networking with other musicians and getting to know you guys, but it helps. I know it helps others. Like, people can watch these videos back and they can learn about if they want to get on a cruise ship, they want to go theatre shows. It's just, you know, a really insightful way, hopefully, for them to be able to find out more information about potential work in the industry, I suppose.
I think that's probably the first time I've ever been called insightful, so thanks for that.
No, definitely, mate. Luke Christian said, hey, man, ever had RSI? Have you ever had any problems with RSI?
Not massively. When I was on the ships and playing all the time, I had some and obviously I was playing bass. I had some problems with my right wrist, which is obviously, I guess, just doing this for 3 hours a night. But I wouldn't call it RSI. It was just more strain. I think it was probably something I'd done, you know, just hit something in the wrong way, which had set it off. And then obviously you're playing on it for a couple of weeks. But I've never actually had RSI, and I think that's probably down to the fact that I should practice a lot more than I do. I play a lot, but I don't practice a lot anymore, as in I've never been one to sit down with a metronome and blast scales and stuff like that. So the repetitive part of that injury doesn't really happen for me, because I should be practicing a lot more than I am.
That's fair, mate. That's fair. You gig enough as it is. So here we go. Let's have a look at some other ones. So, okay. What album? This is from Dan Burville, I think.
Oh, yeah, he's a good. I was best man at his wedding. All right, Dan.
There you go. So it says, what album artist is influencing your playing right now at this moment?
Oh, that is a blimmin' good question. There's so many. I mean, I'm getting a bit back into more heavy music at the moment. I'm really into a band called Sleep Token. I don't know if you've ever heard them.
I've not.
That's sort of that like ambient but very heavy kind of thing. Because I've always been into my heavy music, but I'm not a big sort of screamo fan. So it's got to have, you know, good. And that just hits the nail on the head. So that's really making me want to dig out my baritone guitar and start doing some chuggy stuff again. But I really like that sort of stuff. They're not an album necessarily, but there's that guy. I mentioned him in a recent video. I think his name's Matteo Mancuso. He's the Yamaha guy that plays with that classical.
I know who you're on about, yeah.
Yeah, every time I watch him, it literally blows the brains out the back of my head. I don't understand how he's doing it. And he's got such a great sort of phrasing thing going on as well. I'm really into like Ariel Posen. His stuff is unreal. Again, it's great songs for a start off, which is so important to me. Like, I love listening to shredders and instrumental stuff at times, but having a great song and then the bonus of an absolutely incredible guitarist over the top is so obviously like Brothers Landreth as well. I mean, that's always on repeat. Yeah, so quite eclectic sort of thing at the moment. Yeah, but yes, Dan, I hope that answered your question, mate. If not, you give me a call in a bit.
I think it did. So Ben Newton just says, hi guys. And Ben was one of the guests a good few months back now. He said, all good with the stage so far, because he's got a Kemper stage, just recently bought a Kemper stage rig. I think he bought which is my ideal setup as well. He bought 2 stereo cabs.
Oh, nice.
So he had 2 stereo cabs, I think, and the stage in that, and running in ears. So that's to me, that's perfect setup.
Yeah.
If you can have cabs on stage, that is. But yeah, so he said to me, update the firmware. So who else is asking a question? So there's quite a few on here, mate. And what we might get you to do, because people might drop some other questions and then we can't answer live. If you don't mind, I know you're busy today, but at some point, if someone tags you in it, if you look through the questions and someone might.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be sat in a van for about 3 hours later on, so I'm sure I'll have time to have a look.
All right, well, I'll leave some of these for you to have a little answer then. Yeah, one more. So I think this is Dan again, your friend Dan. Favorite bit of gear at the moment?
Oh, the thing is, I wouldn't say it's like my favorite bit of gear, but I cannot overstate the whole Kemper situation and how much easier that's made my life on, because the thing is with like the Jackson show, especially, we do theaters, arenas, festivals, and I mean, festivals are always carnage. Yeah. So it's nice to be able, I mean, every sound engineer that I've worked with on that show loves the Kemper, because it's like 2 XLRs stereo out every night. It sounds exactly the same. Yep. For me as well, on my in-ears, I've got like a little head rush monitor that I use on stage as feedback, and if my in-ears went down and all that sort of stuff. But it's having that consistency every night that it's going to sound the same in my in-ears, because we all know if you use in-ears, you put a mic on a cab, every night it's going to be slightly different.
And then it's slightly move or whatever.
Yeah, and it's all that sort of stuff. And also the reliability factor. I've not had any problems with the Kemper, touch wood. Obviously, you've had 1 or 2, but it's also, if I was taking a valve amp on the road, oh yeah, it's in the van going over the British potholes, and it's being plugged into an unknown voltage. I mean, some of the theaters we do are very recently refurbished, and some of them don't look like they've been touched since like 1979. So it's and festivals as well, you're coming off a generator. Like, I've used amps on festival gigs where you're just like, this doesn't even sound like my amp, and I'm sure the voltage is so much lower than it should be, and all this stuff. So I would say my most practical favorite piece of gear is the Kemper. I'd say my favorite piece of gear in general at the moment is probably my relatively new Tom Anderson, because I've always been a Les Paul player. I've always gravitated to a Les Paul. I grew up playing a Les Paul. If I have a choice, I'm normally playing a Les Paul. But with doing more music, especially funk stuff and all that, you can't really replicate that, neck and middle position, quacky funk thing. So I've sort of been forced into Strats a little bit, and I've been searching for one that's really sort of ticks the box, and that's the first one I found, because the Sir was lovely and I've still got it, and it is a great guitar, but it's really hard to describe. When a piece of gear is great but you just don't 100% gel with it.
Yep.
But the Tom Anderson's the first one that I picked up, and it sort of gives out exactly what I put in. It's a lot lighter, so my back is far happier, and it's nice just to pick up a guitar and it brings you joy. So I would say, yeah, Tom Anderson, favorite piece of gear at the moment. Kemper is my most practical, life-saving piece of gear.
Fantastic. As I said, Dan, I'm going to let you, if there is any questions on there, I'll let you answer them on your journey to the gig. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you very much for coming on as a guest. It's been a pleasure talking to you. As I said, very insightful. I know you said you don't like being called insightful. I've never been called insightful before, but yeah, very insightful. Thank you for your videos on YouTube, because they are brilliant, and do keep going with them. I know that your schedule in terms of gigging and theatre probably makes that very difficult to be set up. Yeah. Setting up your room in that ready for videos and stuff. But yeah, if you do get back to them, then they are great videos. But yeah, thank you very much, Dan. As I said, and maybe at some point, because I feel like I could talk to another 3 hours with you, but maybe we'll get you back for like a part 2 or something, and we'll we'll talk about some more subjects in the industry.
100%, mate. Thank you so much for having me. Like I said, it's the first time I've been asked to do anything like this, and being called insightful for a start is a new one on me. And it is that thing, like, you know, I don't. Obviously, you know, the YouTube thing's gained a bit of traction and stuff, but when you asked me to do the podcast, like the first thought in my mind was like, who's going to watch that? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just like a working guitarist. I've never, so this kind of thing is still weird to me, but it's been awesome just to hang out. Even if it was the two of us, I'd be, you know,
that's the thing. I mean, I see it as that. I mean, I see it as networking, and I'm chatting with you, and for me, I get a lot from it, and you get a lot from it.
Yeah,
it's great. I mean, obviously, I want people to watch as well, but it's great that people do watch and interact with it. But I'd just be happy chatting with you for an hour to minute, mate. So it's all good. So yeah, I enjoyed it. So enjoy your hopefully nice trip in the van on the way to the gig, and I hope your fingers are all ready for playing bass, because that sounds hard work.
I'll get the super glue at the ready just in case.
Dan, lovely to speak to you, mate. You take care, and I'll see you all soon.
Awesome, mate. Thank you.
Cheers.